What do you do if your father's life is threatened by a travesty of justice? As a daughter, how far will you stretch beyond your shy, private demeanour, stepping into the glare of the media and the world stage to help bring him home? Sarah Karabus has taken many leaps of faith since her father, South African paediatric oncologist Professor Cyril Karabus, was arrested in the United Arab Emirates for manslaughter. This is her story. I remember this one when your brother had his child.
Little Gabriel.
Yeah.
We really wanted my dad to be there for the birth. And we were hoping he'd come home just before that. And it was really bittersweet, because you're happy the baby's born, but you're sad that Grandpa's missing.
Sarah comes from a large family. She was the oldest of 5 children and from an early age developed a strong sense of responsibility. But she was also shy, preferring her own company to playing with her siblings. Sarah was strong, but she was different.
I was the bossy one, the one who always had to do the right thing, who had to tell the siblings what the right thing was to do. And when they were running wild and playing games, I was very disapproving.
What would you do as a child? What were you like?
Reading in a corner, on the floor in the sun. That's basically what I spent my whole childhood doing, as far as I remember.
She was very much a bookworm, very quiet, very organised, very categorised. Things had to all be in the exact correct place. Couldn't borrow her Cokies, definitely not. Because if we returned them in the wrong order, it was a serious problem.
We'd be braaiing in the garden on a Sunday. I would be sitting on an inflatable tyre in the pool reading my book, and the other kids would be playing in the river.
You were very different to your siblings. You were the quiet one.
I was painfully shy as a child. I found it difficult to greet my parents' friends. If they asked me how I was, I couldn't say I'm fine. I just blushed and kept quiet. I was too embarrassed to speak on the phone.
But what about school?
The dread of school orals. I would sit in class with sweaty palms, wanting to vomit, waiting for the teacher to call my name. Once I was up there speaking, it was okay if I'd practiced. But I had to have practiced so many times that I knew it almost off by heart. My heart would go fast. And once it was over, I'd just feel the biggest sense of relief.
Sarah's father, Professor Cyril Karabus, is a highly respected paediatrician who served as head of Cape Town's Red Cross Children's Hospital Oncology Department for many years.
I remember if I was studying and I needed to know something, there was no internet. I went to my dad, who knew everything, and he would never give us the answer. He would tell us to go look it up in World Book. It was very frustrating because you knew he knew the answer, and he would get frustrated with us if we didn't ask questions or we weren't sort of inquiring about things or inquisitive. He would actually be upset by that because for him that was very important.
Sarah never intended to follow in her father's footsteps, but an interest in genetics drew her to medicine, and she too became a paediatrician. In a poignant repetition of history, much of her working life today is spent at the Red Cross Children's Hospital, where she used to visit her dad as a little girl.
So all of the siblings talk about spending their weekends at Red Cross Children's Hospital and playing with the sick kids. When she started working there as a registrar, some of the nurses remembered her and recognised her, and I thought it was quite amusing.
Sarah has a general practice but specialises in paediatric allergies.
Okay. They're going to show you how to use it. They've got a pretend one. The very first job I did was in paediatrics, and then only I fell in love with paediatrics.
What did you fall in love with?
The children, they don't lie to you, they don't mislead you. They're honest. If they're in pain, they tell you. If they're feeling better, they tell you. So when they're better, they smile and say thank you, and that's the end,
Sarah's been married to her husband Gavin for 7 years, and they have 2 children, Noah and Ella.
Okay, ready? Let's go.
Okay, the girls can play green and the boys can play red.
Okay, ready? Steady?
Oh, bunny. Yeah, that's bunny. Then have a
She's very quiet, you know. She's a little bit introverted, like myself, and we're very uncomplicated people. We met as teenagers, you know, and we only started dating about a decade later. And only when we started dating, she once said to me, she said, "No, I used to think you were cute in the day." And I said, "No, really? Well, you know, why don't you tell me?" She said, "No, I was too shy." And, you know, that's how she's always been. Even at our wedding, she didn't like to really twist her arm to do the first dance because she just hates being centre of attention. She hates people looking at her. She likes to be in the background, you know, observe rather than be observed.
But something changed that stretched you, pushed your boundaries,
You could say that.
and brought you to where you are today, being able to sit here talk to me with a camera. What happened in your and your family's life that changed things?
I didn't have a choice.
Sarah Karabus is a wife and mother with a demanding job as a paediatrician. A naturally shy person, she was leading a busy but contained life, surrounded by the people she loves most. And then her family's life was torn apart.
In August 2012, my brother Matthew got married and my whole family went to the wedding in Canada.
It was the first time that the entire Karabus family had been together in 7 years. A warm and happy time in Toronto. After the wedding, they returned to South Africa via Dubai and received a day visa to rest at an airport hotel before catching their connection back to Cape Town. They had no idea what awaited them.
My kids were hungry and tired and they'd been on a plane for 9 hours and were being revolting. And my mother and father were behind us, but because the kids, we just needed to get them settled, we went ahead of them.
Sarah, Gavin and the kids ate and slept at the hotel with no knowledge of the drama that was beginning to unfold at the airport's passport control.
And came back to the airport to catch the flight, where we saw my mother standing alone in tears at the airport and said that my father had been arrested. So when they had tried to go through passport control, he was taken away.
A little disbelief, really. It was just a very strange thing. At first, we didn't think Sarah's mum was being serious. I made a wisecrack. I couldn't remember what it was, and then we realised that it was, you know, this serious thing. And it was incredibly rushed. I mean, we were the last people aboard the plane, and we discovered this, and while we were just processing the information, we had to board the plane.
Dubai officials said that they wouldn't renew our visa and we had to get on the plane and leave.
And then it became this mad rush to be able to get the message out to somebody in South Africa who could take it further. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, South African time. So, and then, of course, you send all the SMSs off and you hope that they get them, and then you have to switch off your phone and you're in the air.
It was terrible. We had to pretend everything was fine for the kids, but inside we had no idea what was going on with him. We didn't know if we'd ever see him again. We didn't know why he'd been arrested.
But before boarding their flight, they'd managed to reach family member and lawyer Michael Bagram, who immediately took up the fight to bring Professor Karabus home.
I spent the next 3 days phoning, pushing, trying to find out where Cyril was, whether he was alive. In fact, we were getting quite desperate. We phoned the hospitals, we phoned prisons, jails. I phoned everyone I could find in Dubai. No one knew where Cyril was. Cyril Karabus had effectively disappeared.
After a frantic search, Professor Karabus was finally located in an Abu Dhabi detention centre, where he was being held on charges of manslaughter and forgery.
So when we got back to Cape Town, we were advised by lawyers this side and that side in the UAE that we should not tell the press. So we kept it to ourselves.
Why?
They said to us that it may be dangerous for him.
12 years earlier, Professor Karabus had done a locum at the Sheikh Khalifa Medical Center in Abu Dhabi, where a terminally ill child he had treated had died of cancer. Unbeknownst to him, the child's family accused him of manslaughter and forgery. He was tried in absentia and found guilty.
Well, of course we knew he wasn't guilty, but that wasn't the point. The point was he had been charged with a crime and nobody bothered to tell him.
We will get attorneys, we'll get him out of there and we'll bring him back. It should be within a week. That's what I assured them at that point. We didn't realize what we were actually embarking upon. We had no idea.
A month later, Professor Karabus was still in jail, and news broke in the media. Soon the entire country and later the world was following his story.
So this is September the 21st, but it was a month before that he'd been arrested and it started to break.
This is when it first came out.
Sure.
And what a relief, actually, it was in the end. Because you're keeping this secret and you don't know whether you should publicize it or keep it a secret, and then you're forced to do something.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, he said he's completely innocent, and he said the records will show that. We then tried to get hold of the medical records. Someone had destroyed them.
Sarah tracked down the doctor that Cyril did the locum for. She managed to convince him to go and search through all his notes and send her notes through here. I was quite amazed.
He then assured me that if they went to the hospital, we would be able to get hold of the different departments and you could recreate the record from the departmental records, which we then started doing. And effectively, it showed that he was not guilty.
Even though his innocence could be proved, Professor Karabus was not freed. His court hearing was postponed 14 times, his health was deteriorating, and his family was getting desperate.
Well, you would get your hopes up for the next court date because you would think, well, it has to end now, it's enough. I mean, they can't keep going on. He would go to court in the morning and we would all be very excited, and then they'd tell us, no, it's postponed again, for no reason.
The legal system in the United Arab Emirates is not the one that we understand in the Western world at all.
So what did you as a family decide to do?
We had a family meeting around my parents' dining room table, and we needed to make a plan of action.
There were issues that we hadn't ever had to deal with before. We now needed to come up with ridiculous amounts of money at the drop of a hat in order to secure my father's his bail.
There were too many people trying to do too many things, so we had to divide up the tasks. My job was to coordinate.
While leadership came naturally to Sarah, her inherent shyness would soon be challenged to the limit.
My campaign was drying up because it's no good Michael Bagram, who's a boring old lawyer, telling the press about the story. You did need a member of the family to say it, and she was perfectly placed to do it, and she wouldn't do it.
A journalist phoned me and asked if I would be interviewed on the news. And I wanted to say no.
I figured if there was a good chance that if he was forced to serve his sentence, that he would never come home.
And we said, you have to. You want Cyril home, you've got to do this.
So I spoke to the journalist and I said, okay, I'll do it, but you have to tell me before what questions you're going to ask me, and you can't ask me anything other than that, because I need to prepare my answers and I need to know that I'm not saying the wrong thing.
She was incredibly nervous. I had to sit for the day before, doing mock interviews so she could get her answers right.
I waited 5 minutes for the call, sweaty palms, palpitations, certain I would say something wrong and have my father beheaded.
567, Cape Talk. Professor Cyril Karabus is an internationally well-respected medical figure who specializes in pediatrics.
I had a tummy ache because I knew it was coming on. I'm sitting in my car, I'm listening to her on the radio.
We speak to his daughter in Claremont, in Cape Town. Sarah Karabus, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
And I thought, please God, say something. Sarah, just say something. I'm begging you to say something. And she got it out.
Hi, good afternoon.
Why is your father arrested?
He's alleged, well, we didn't know for a long time.
And then she started talking. It was a bit of stuttering in that first interview. And she did have sort of the blank moment on radio, which is a horrible thing to happen. But it worked. It was fantastic.
What was your greatest fear while your dad was there in jail?
My greatest fear was that he would die there and I'd never see him again.
Sarah Karabus had to overcome her shyness and fear of public speaking to help free her 78-year-old father. He'd been unjustly jailed in the UAE, and for months Sarah, her family and their lawyer had battled to get him freed.
Every day I would go to work for 8 to 10 hours, and then I'd come home and wall myself off in the study and answer 200 emails, 300 emails, take phone calls, write letters to companies, speak to international organizations, have meetings with international organizations over Skype. There was never time to cook or buy food or, do anything else other than this.
Her ability to never sleep and just keep on. I said I needed a phone number, she'd find it. I mean, you could send her an SMS at 3 in the morning, she'd quite happily then SMS back saying, this is the contact person, this is their number, this is their email address.
She was dealing with some of the highest and most powerful people in the world directly.
And in the midst of this high-level behind-the-scenes campaign, Sarah had become skilled at her new public role and was frequently dealing with the media.
By the end of it, I remember the phone ringing for the breakfast morning shows on radio and still be in bed. They'd been woken up by the phone saying, can you do an interview? Sure, when? Now. And she said, fine. And she would lie in bed half asleep and do an interview, no problems, no anxiety.
We believe it's a family who's hurt and upset and needed to blame somebody. And the easiest person to blame was the doctor who was not there.
But almost throughout this ordeal, she managed to be the warrior, the person that fought every inch of the way. If she heard there was an Abu Dhabi ice hockey team coming to South Africa, she immediately planted the seed because she knew she could get me going. I said, we're going to have a protest there, we're going to have the TV there, we're going to shout free Cyril Karabus. And she said, yes, that's what I wanted to hear.
6 months had passed and the Karabus team lobbied medical bodies to place pressure on the UAE government. The World Medical Association issued a cautionary warning medical practitioners about working in the UAE.
And what was it like to see these new headlines? I mean, it was freedom for Karabus, but he still had to get his passport and his visa and come home.
He wasn't home. I think it was just, hopeful, but this wasn't. I looked at those and I said, wait till tomorrow.
Then the time that hit her hardest out of everything, I think, was after he'd been found not guilty and then they had decided to appeal. It was as though, we celebrated when he was found not guilty and we thought, that's it, we've achieved what we set out to do all those months ago. And then about 3 days later, she phoned me and then she was in tears saying they're going to appeal and there's an appeal.
Another emotional moment was a gathering in Cape Town where former patients of Professor Karabus paid homage to the man who had saved so many lives.
I thank every single person for taking the time and trouble for coming here this evening. Really appreciate it.
I think each of us, as Michael has said, each of us does have a story. Gave me my daughter and saved her life.
That is the kind of man Dr. Karabus was. He made our life easier.
Patients got up each in turn to speak about my father and what he meant to them. And that was the only time I couldn't sort of contain myself.
Because he spent so much time with all of you, we didn't get to spend much time with him. I remember we used to wake up for school pretty early, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and Dad was already at G1. Weekends, of course, were a different story. He used to take us down pretty much every Saturday to G1.
How did you manage your practice and the work to free your dad?
Well, I think things did fall by the wayside. Didn't spend enough time with my family and my children, and pay attention to the things I should have, but there was no choice. So what are you going to do?
In Abu Dhabi, Professor Karabus had no idea of the massive campaign and support he had back home. Finally, his release was real, and after 8 months, the whole nation was waiting, along with the Karabus family.
When for you was it over?
When the South African ambassador to the UAE called us from the airport and said that he had seen him go through passport control. Only then. And the officials from DIRCO drove us onto the tarmac and put us on the plane before everybody got off. So we stood, in the gangway waiting for him, with all the officials wearing Welcome Home Prof Karabus t-shirts. Dad got off the plane, he looked very confused to see us all. Everybody started cheering and clapping, and he said, "Wat gaan aan?" He couldn't understand what was going on. Then he asked if the Springboks were arriving. When he saw all the people.
I knew there would be a big crowd, but I didn't think there'd be a crowd quite that big to meet me. And, especially they had the klopse singing. That was another sort of surprise. It was a fantastic welcome, really. I was really taken aback. I think I'm blessed by my family. I have a very, very great family.
She's still, the same woman I married. I just think now more people get to see what I saw in her and what I see in her. This, deep well of self-confidence that perhaps didn't come across through her shyness. But, if ever I'm in trouble, I want Sarah fighting in my corner.